Beskar, which was the Manda tongue name for the Mandalorian iron, was an extremely rare alloy that was only found on Mandalore and its subsequent moon. In its raw form, it was a silver color with a wavy pattern across its surface. As the Mandalorians were an ancient warrior culture, they used the alloy to craft their iconic Mandalorian armor out of it. Although the armor's looks did evolve throughout the time, the Beskar it was made out of was always a consistent part in their history. What made Beskar so special was that it had some of the strongest durability found in the galaxy. In its purest form, the metal was capable of withstanding blaster shots pretty easily, and could even repel lightsaber strikes for a short amount of time. Add to that it was extremely lightweight to carry. Due to this, it was extremely sought after and the most valuable metal alloy in the galaxy. In Mandalorian culture, it was seen as some of the highest honors to receive a Beskar armor. The clans and houses of Mandalore, such as Clan Vizsla, Ordo, or Ren, all passed down their traditional forging methods for generations to preserve the techniques that allowed Beskar armor to remain nearly impervious. The process of shaping and reforging Beskar was a carefully guarded secret, seen as sacred among Mandalorians. As the metal was so deeply ingrained in their culture, the Mandalorians believed that all Beskar rightfully belonged to them, and rarely sold it to outsiders. However, throughout generations and through different wars, Beskar also started to fall into the hands of several other factions. This led to a shortage of Beskar, which meant that some of the later Mandalorians started wearing Durasteel armor instead of pure Beskar, due to the rarity of the metal. During the Clone Wars, only very few individuals and high clan members still possessed a pure Beskar armor, with most other ones only having parts or no Beskar at all in their armor. Despite its strength, Beskar could still be damaged by weapons made from the same alloy. Weapons like the Beskar spear were able to break through the armor and could seriously harm the receiver of it. Other prominent weapons made of Beskar were the Mandalorian Cal knives, the crushed gaunts, which were gloves reinforced with Beskar plates, or the dark saber hilt. Due to its impervious nature, the Galactic Empire sought to find a way to counter the Mandalorian clans, which refused to submit to their rule. With the help of a young Sabine Wren, they were able to develop a superweapon called the Arc Pulse Generator. This weapon could be mounted onto an AT-DP and had the ability to superheat the Mandalorian's Beskar armor, causing it to incinerate the person below the armor. The final strength of pure Beskar is that it had the uncanny ability to have blaster shots magically pulled towards itself, which meant that open areas like joints and such would never be hit. For obvious reasons, this is a joke, but I always found it rather funny how Mando always just walks into the middle of a room or stands in the open to fight people behind cover and relies on them just only hitting the parts of his armor that are clad in Beskar. Guess the strongest armor isn't Beskar, but plot armor. Cortosis ore was another extremely rare metal. It's best known for its unique conductive ability that was able to cause lightsabers to short out temporarily upon contact. This made Cortosis the only material in the world that could effectively counter Jedi or Sith force wielders that mostly carried lightsabers. In addition to disrupting lightsaber functionality, Cortosis was also naturally resistant to light blaster fire, as its conductive abilities allowed it to absorb the blaster bolts. Mining Cortosis was also quite dangerous, as the ore was inherently unstable in its unrefined form. It carried energy and would unleash that energy upon contact with the skin, killing whoever came in contact with it. Miners were thus required to wear specialized equipment to avoid any exposure to Cortosis in the mines. To combat Cortosis dust, which could settle if it got into an organism's system, special filters had to be worn, or else the Cortosis dust could cause several illnesses, or even death. Traditional energy tools like plasma torches were also ineffective to mine the ore due to its energy resistance, forcing miners to use hydraulic jacks, which used brute force to break the ore out. However, these jacks wore down quickly, and their pistons could become clogged with Cortosis dust, rendering them useless and needing to be replaced. Mining was further complicated by the frequent presence of lethane gas pockets, which were highly inflammable and often found near Cortosis deposits. Cortosis was used throughout galactic history upon its discovery. Darth Bane himself was a Cortosis miner for several years before he eventually joined the Sith Army. During the Clone Wars, the Separatists built the CB-3 Cortosis Super Battle Droid to try and counter the Jedi. Imperial Shadow Trooper armor also incorporated Cortosis to resist potential lightsaber attacks. Some rumors even had it that the walls of the Imperial Palace were lined with Cortosis. Weapons were also made using Cortosis, such as blades, swords, gauntlets, and even shields. Gauntlets were especially popular, as you could use them to defend from incoming attacks and still hold your own lightsaber. Cad Bane also used a slug thrower that fired Cortosis-tipped projectiles to disable the Jedi's lightsabers, but these weapons were very rare and expensive to come by. Overall, the metal is an interesting part of the lore, although I do think it's underexplored and kinda opens a myriad of plot holes as to why important personnel like Vader wouldn't just simply implement Cortosis into their own armor. Or why not anyone wealthy enough just uses it to go up against Force wielders. But maybe that's just me. Carboplast was a metal that was used to encompass the KX security droid's cognitive modules and armor. It was extremely strong and could deflect light blaster shots without any issues, as seen in Andor. Only several shots were able to overload it, as seen at the end of Rogue One. Other than that, nothing is really known about this metal. Phrik was a metallic gold-colored compound known to be capable of resisting lightsaber strikes. It was primarily mined on Gromas 16, known as one of the only places that the metal was available. There, the raw ore was combined with the mineral tydirium to form the final Phrik compound. The compound was the one used to produce several weapons and armors. A further bonus was that it was very lightweight and easy to wear. It was very valuable and was frequently used in crafting battle armor as well as melee weapons. The Magna Guard's Electro Staff, for example, was made out of Phrik. That's why it was able to resist lightsaber hits, though we do see Grievous cutting through one of them during his fight with Kenobi, meaning that with enough energy, Phrik could still be cut through. Palpatine's lightsaber was also said to be made of Phrik. Most prominently, though, the Phase 3 Dark Troopers were made of Phrik, which made them virtually resistant to blasters and lightsabers. This was only in the EU timeline, though, as the Phase 3 Dark Troopers we see in The Mandalorian seem to have been cut through rather easily by Luke's lightsaber. In general, its strength is a bit variable. A Phrik container on Alderaan contained a holocron where Bail Organa had sent his final message with different fallback options for the rebellion, should the Yavin base be discovered. This container miraculously remained intact even after the planet's obliteration by the Death Star. Orbalisk armor was a unique and formidable suit made up entirely of Orbalisks. Orbalisks were parasitic organisms that were native to the moon Dixon and possessed an extremely hard outer shell that was nearly indestructible. They attached themselves to a host body using thousands of tiny, sharp teeth, and sustained themselves by feeding on the dark side energy radiating from their host. Once attached, they'd multiply by themselves and grow to envelop the host entirely from head to toe. The most well-known users of Orbalisk armor was the Sith Lord Darth Bane. Wearing this armor made Bane impervious to lightsaber strikes and also granted him enhancements like accelerated healing from a special chemical the Orbalisk released that could cover almost any wound, increasing his strength and agility with special enzyme strength. Kinda like how the Venom symbiote grants one special powers, the Orbalisk could be seen as a symbiotic relationship with its host. But wearing the armor was extremely painful and would wear the host down. The Orbalisk would feed on the dark side energy that came from the pain, and in turn inject bursts of adrenaline into the host system, creating a continuous feedback loop. Bane would feel pain, which increases the dark side. They'd pump him up with adrenaline, and Bane was then stronger for it. Darth Bane managed to master the Orbalisk and could maintain a constant surge of force power, making him almost unstoppable in combat with unlimited stamina and strength. However, wearing this armor did have another big downside. If even one of the Orbalisk were killed, it would release lethal toxins into the host's body. These chemicals would break down the host on a subatomic level, leading to death within days. During one fight, a Jedi managed to redirect Bane's Force Lightning back at him, which destroyed a part of his armor. He only survived thanks to a special healing technique, but all the other Orbalisks were also removed to ensure his survival. Aside from killing their host should they be killed, they also kept growing and would eventually cover the host entirely. For that reason, Bane wore a special helmet and face mask that prevented the Orbalisk from covering his face, as they would have suffocated him. What a very unique armor in the galaxy. Duroplast was a white metal that was extremely strong. If synthesized together with carbon, it created one of the most durable armors in the galaxy. It was quite popular as well, as you could easily melt it together with other metals like Cortosis to create armor strong enough to even resist lightsaber strikes. The Katarn class armor, which we see issued to Clone Commandos, was made of Duraplast carbon synthesis. The Katarn Armour was incredibly resistant and has shown itself to be resistant to blasters, scatterguns, grenades, and even strong explosions, as the Duraplast armor could resist these impacts. For example, Clone Commando Gregor survived the exploding depot on Abafar as well as 2 direct blaster shots at point-blank range to the chest plate during his escape from an Imperial base on Daro. Of course, there was more that made up the Katarn armor, as it was specifically built and layered in a way that the commando under the suit could survive these impacts. It was even equipped with deflector shield technology, and could also be sealed up to withstand the pressure of space. The Duroplast alloy was the important part that made this armor as resistant as it was. Boba Fett's helmet before the retcon was actually also made of Duroplast, hence why it was even possible to shoot the iconic dent into it. This was now retconned to Boba's armor being Beskar, and the reason for the dent is unexplained, as continuity is non-existent anyway at this point, sadly. The Zillo beast that appeared at the Battle of Malastare had scales that were made of one of the most resistant materials in the galaxy. During that episode, we see several bombs, heavy laser cannons, and more being shot at the beast, and it merely shrugging the blasts off. Anakin even tries to attack it with his lightsaber, only to see it bounce off his armor. The only way the Zillo beast was able to be brought down was by exposing the gaps in its armor and stunning it with ion cannons through aforementioned gaps. After its rediscovery, Palpatine had ordered its scales to be replicated to be used for armors and other things due to its strength. We never got to see the result of these experimentations though, only that the Empire had been working on replicating these. A cloned Zillo beast was held in Mount Tantus, for example. I'd just like to see a TIE fighter covered in Zillo armor. That would have been cool. Probably won't ever see it, sadly, though. We've covered a lot of durable armor so far. However, nothing, and I mean nothing, comes close to the quantum crystalline armor. This armor was literally impenetrable. This material was used to encase the Sun Crusher, a superweapon made at a secret Imperial facility in the Maw installation. The armor structure consisted of multiple layers of tightly packed atoms, laminated together and then overlaid with second thin film. This outer film underwent experimental phase shifting, resulting in a secondary layer that was just as resilient as the primary one. The overall design gave the armor such exceptional durability that, in theory, it could withstand the detonation of the Sun Crusher's own resonance torpedoes, which were capable of destroying an entire planet, I might add. The quantum crystalline armor's feats of survival include, but are not limited to, surviving a supernova, ramming into a Star Destroyer bridge and ripping through it without any damage, withstanding turbo-laser fire, and the extreme atmospheric pressure of the gas giant Yavin. Yep, it could survive everything, and was the most overpowered material to have ever existed in Star Wars media. The only way it was finally destroyed was by piloting it into a black hole. The Vonduun crab was a crab-like animal whose shell would be used to make armor out of. The Yuuzhan Vong warriors wore a crab as the bioengineered armor, while it was still alive. The armor exhibited crystalline properties, which contributed to its high resistance against various forms of weaponry. It could absorb or deflect blaster bolts, slug thrower rounds, and yes, even lightsaber strikes. We've heard that a lot at this point. The Vonduun crab itself had spiky, spear-like legs that were extremely sharp. That's why the armor had spikes all around, and these could also be pulled off and be utilized as offensive weapons. One specialized pair of limbs, known as grip legs, occasionally latched onto the corners of the wearer's mouth, contorting the face into a sinister, skull-like grin. However, Vonduun crab armor had its limitations. It was not strong enough to withstand the heavier weapons of, say, starfighters, and could be cracked under the strength something like the Mandalorian crush gauntlets. Another vulnerability, since the crab was a living organism, was that its gills were located in the armpit area, which were a weak point that could be striked at. It was also discovered late into the Yuuzhan Vong War that the crabs were allergic to the pollen of a bafor tree. If exposed to the pollen, the crab would inflate and kill its host. Force lightning was also able to destroy the armor. Darth Krayt was one of the only non-Yuuzhan Vong wearer of a Vonduun crab armor. It was usually quite hard to get a hold of them, as in order to kill its wearer, the armor had to be destroyed as well. Ultra Chrome was a metallic material used primarily for starship armor during the era of the Great Sith War. It had a silver appearance and was superconductive, meaning it could conduct a lightsaber strike's energy throughout the entire surface. Same goes with blaster fire. However, if the lightsaber was allowed to stay on ultra chrome, it would eventually overheat and start to melt. Captain Phasma's chrome armor is most likely made of ultra chrome. Durasteel was a very versatile metal alloy widely used for various applications. The alloy was created using several different components including carbon, carvanium, and zirconium, the latter being essential for its composition. Due to the effort to composite it though, it was quite expensive, and not something everyday citizens could find themselves using. A lot of military starships and vehicles would find themselves encased in Durasteel as it was quite strong and offered protection against kinetic impacts like scrapes from meteors and such. It was also strong enough to withstand vibroblade strikes and even badly placed lightsaber strikes. Other notable objects that were made of Durasteel were a myriad amount of lightsabers. Durasteel was very versatile, as it could also be manufactured into a flexible material. The black gloves from Imperial weapons technicians, for example, were made from the flexible Durasteel material. It was also used in construction, as several buildings and pillars were at times reinforced with Durasteel to make them more stable. Darth Vader's armor also most prominently featured Durasteel in combination with obsidian, as did ships like the Millennium Falcon. Jango and Boba Fett's armor also were made of Durasteel, before they retroactively changed it to Beskar. There was also the Duranium, a composite of Durasteel and Armourplast that was even stronger, and could stand against glancing blows from a lightsaber and also against blaster fire. Duranium was most notably used for General Grievous's armor as well as parts of his Magna Guards. As a final note, I do always question why Vader didn't just upgrade his suit to a more durable alloy like Beskar or something. Considering him being the Empire's top dog, surely they would have spared these rare metals for Darth Vader himself, right? Then again, I don't think Vader really needs it, but still, it's always useful to have, right? With that, I conclude this video. Like the video and subscribe.